The spaceport was silent at night, only the hum of engines and the flicker of neon lights breaking the darkness. Old cargo ships rested like tired beasts, and the air smelled of oil, smoke, and dust. Most travelers had already left, leaving only shadows between the broken crates and steel walls. He walked slowly, a tall human man in a worn jacket, scars across his face telling stories of old battles. His name was Elias, a soldier once feared in war, now just a wanderer. He wanted nothing but silence, nothing but to be left alone, but silence did not last. From behind a pile of broken containers, a small voice whispered, soft, trembling, and desperate, "Please, be my dad." "I'll behave." Elias stopped, his eyes narrowed. He thought his ears were playing tricks. No one had ever called him that, not in all his years. Slowly, he turned. There she was, a small alien girl, no more than 10 years old in human age. Her skin was pale, silver glowing faintly under the lights. Her large violet eyes shimmered with tears. She wore a torn cloak, her hands clutching the fabric as if it was her last shield. Elias said nothing. His soldier's instinct told him to move on. This was not his problem. He had buried enough ghosts already. But the girl stepped closer, her thin legs shaking. "I'll be good," she whispered again. "I promise I'll behave. I won't make trouble, please. Just don't leave me alone." Her words cut deeper than any weapon. They were not rehearsed lies. They were the words of someone who had lost everything. Elias felt something stir in his chest, a memory of war, children running through fire, begging soldiers for food, for safety, for someone to hold their hand. He had turned away then, too broken to help, and he hated himself for it. "Where's your family?" he asked, his voice rough. The girl's lips trembled. "My stepmother. She threw me out. She said I'm not wanted. She said I don't belong in her house." Her eyes lowered, shining with pain. "She said I should disappear, before she makes me disappear." Elias clenched his jaw. He had seen cruelty, but to cast away a child, it was worse than war. Still, he kept his distance. "And why come to me?" Her small hand lifted, pointing at him. "Because you didn't look away when you heard me. Everyone else walks past, but you stopped." Elias froze. He had no answer for that. He wanted to deny it, wanted to push her away. But something inside refused. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Kid, I'm not a father. I'm barely a man trying to survive." She stepped forward again, now only a few feet from him. Her eyes shone like broken stars. "Then let me survive with you." The silence between them was heavy. Elias looked around, making sure no one watched. Taking in a child meant taking in danger. He knew that, and yet, leaving her meant leaving her to die. Finally, he muttered, "One night, that's all. Just one night. You'll stay, then tomorrow we'll see." The girl's eyes lit up, a flicker of hope breaking her despair. She nodded quickly. "I'll behave, I promise." Elias turned and began walking toward the small rented room he used near the edge of the spaceport. He heard her footsteps following close behind, light and careful like a shadow afraid to vanish. As they passed under a broken neon sign, Elias glanced at her again. Something about her was unusual, not just her silver skin or violet eyes, but the way the air seemed to hum faintly around her, as if carrying an energy he could not understand. He shook his head. He didn't want mysteries. He wanted peace. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Inside the room, she sat quietly on the floor, watching him with wide eyes. Elias gave her a piece of old bread and a blanket, expecting her to eat quickly. Instead, she held the bread in both hands, whispering, "Thank you, Dad," before taking a small bite. The word hit him harder than any blade. He wanted to correct her, tell her not to call him that. But the word felt strangely right, even if it did not belong to him. As she curled under the blanket, her fragile body trembling less now, Elias sat in the corner, unable to sleep. His soldier's instinct screamed that something was wrong. That girl was no ordinary runaway. Something about her stepmother's words, her strange glow, the way the air shifted around her. It all whispered danger, and he was right. Because, at that very moment, in the higher levels of the city, alien bounty hunters were spreading her image, showing it in dark markets and secret bars. "Find the banished child," they said. "Bring her back alive, or don't come back at all." Elias didn't know yet, but taking her in had already made him a target. His quiet life was over, and the galaxy would soon learn what it meant when a human chose to stand between innocence and cruelty. The morning came slowly, pale light slipping through the cracks of the small room. Elias sat awake in the chair, his hand resting near the knife on the table. He had not slept, not even for a moment. His eyes kept drifting to the corner where the alien girl slept, curled up in the blanket, her small breaths soft and uneven. For years he had lived alone, never allowing anyone near. He had seen too much, or too much loss. But last night a stranger had walked into his life, a little girl who had looked at him with desperate eyes and called him Dad. He told himself it was only for one night, yet deep down he knew things had already changed. When she woke, her violet eyes blinked at him sleepily. For a moment she looked afraid, as if expecting him to be gone. When she saw him still there, she smiled, small and shy. "You didn't leave," she whispered. Elias grunted. "I said one night, didn't I?" She nodded, clutching the blanket around her shoulders. Her voice was soft when she asked, "Do you still want me to go?" Elias didn't answer right away. He rubbed his scarred face, trying to push away the thought. But something inside him refused to speak the word yes. Instead he said, "Tell me your story, kid. Who are you, really?" Her face darkened. Her fingers twisted the fabric of the blanket. "My name is Lyra," she said quietly. "I was born to the High Lord of Eloria. He was kind. But he died when I was very young. After that, my stepmother took the throne." Elias frowned. The name Eloria was not unfamiliar. It was one of the great alien houses, feared and respected across the systems. To have a child from that bloodline meant trouble. Big trouble. Lyra continued, her voice trembling. "She never liked me. She said I was weak, that I didn't deserve to live in the palace. She called me half-blood, because my mother was not from the same line as her people. She said I make the family look dirty." Her small hands shook as she spoke. "And last week she told the guards to throw me out. She said if I returned I would be punished, worse than death." Elias felt his jaw tighten. He had seen tyrants before, leaders who built power on cruelty. But to hear such words about a child, it burned something deep inside him. Still, he forced his tone to stay cold. "So you ran away?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. I hid in the lower city, but the guards are everywhere. They put a bounty on me, I know it, I can feel it. But I don't want the throne, I don't want anything. I only wanted a father." Her eyes lifted toward him, glowing with that painful hope again. Elias turned away, staring at the floor. He could not bear her gaze. He poured her a cup of water and pushed it across the table. "Drink, eat if you can. We'll figure something out." Lyra held the cup with both hands, sipping carefully as if it was the finest drink in the galaxy. She looked at him with wonder. "You don't talk like the others. You don't look at me like I'm broken." Elias stayed silent, but inside her words struck him. He remembered the soldiers he lost, the orphans begging for food, the faces of those he failed to protect. He had promised himself never to get involved again. Yet, here he was listening to a child who had no one else. A knock suddenly shook the door, sharp and loud. Elias tensed, his hand going to his knife. Lyra's eyes widened with fear. She clutched the blanket tighter, trembling. "Stay quiet," Elias whispered. He moved to the door, his footsteps slow, careful. A deep voice from outside called, "Room check. We're looking for a runaway child. Silver skin, violet eyes. Seen her?" Elias's mind raced. His instincts screamed at him. If he handed her over, his life would return to silence. If he lied, he would step onto a path he could never leave. He looked at Lyra, huddled in the corner, tears welling in her glowing eyes. She mouthed one word. "Please." Elias gritted his teeth. His voice came out calm and firm. "No kids here, just me." There was silence, then footsteps fading away. He waited, counting the seconds until the sound was gone. Only then did he breathe. He turned back to the girl who had covered her mouth with her hands, her small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. He knelt beside her, his rough hand resting awkwardly on her shoulder. "Quiet now, it's fine, they're gone." Lyra looked up at him, tears rolling down her silver cheeks. You protected me." Elias felt his throat tighten. He wanted to deny it, to say it meant nothing, but the truth was clear. He had already made his choice. That night, as the city outside buzzed with whispers of a bounty, Elias sat awake again. Watching the door, his knife on the table, his mind restless. He knew this was no ordinary child. The way she spoke, the glow in her eyes, the danger chasing her, it was all too much. But when he saw her curled in the blanket, whispering in her, "Sleep, Dad, please don't go." Something in his chest broke. Elias had walked away from many battles, many cries for help, but this time, he could not. This time, he would not. And so, the man who once wanted only solitude found himself tied to a girl who carried both sorrow and secrets. Neither of them knew it yet, but their bond would shake the very stars. The next day began with the sharp hum of engines outside the spaceport. Elias watched the window carefully while Lyra ate the bread he gave her. Her small hands broke it into tiny pieces, as if afraid the food would vanish if she ate too quickly. Elias leaned against the wall, arms crossed. His soldier's instincts kept telling him to leave her, drop her at the first safe house, walk away before the bounty hunters caught them both. Yet whenever he looked at her curled up in that blanket whispering "Dad" like it was the only word that kept her alive, he found himself unable to move. "Pack your things," he finally muttered. "We can't stay here, too many eyes." Lyra froze, her violet eyes wide. "You're not leaving me, right?" Elias sighed, rubbing his forehead. "No, I'm not leaving you, kid. I'm just moving us safer place." For the first time, a real smile spread across her face, small and uncertain, but brighter than any neon light in the spaceport. She nodded, eagerly, and followed him as they slipped through the crowded markets. The city was alive with noise, traders shouting, hover carts buzzing, aliens bargaining in strange tongues. The smell of spices mixed with engine smoke. Elias kept his head low, scanning the streets. He had survived many wars by knowing when danger was near. And danger was everywhere now. They found shelter in an old mechanic's shop on the edge of the lower levels. The owner owed Elias a favor from long ago. After a short exchange of words and a quiet payment, they had a small room above the workshop. It wasn't much, just 2 cots, a cracked table, and 1 small lamp. But it was safe, at least for now. Lyra sat on the cot, swinging her thin legs nervously. "It feels like a home," she whispered. Elias looked around the dusty room and almost laughed. "This? Kid, this isn't a home." But Lyra shook her head, her silver hair falling into her glowing eyes. "It is, because you're here." The words pierced him again. Sharper than any blade, Elias had built walls around himself for years. Walls of silence, scars, and solitude. But this child kept finding cracks in them. That evening, Lyra tried to help. She insisted on cooking with him, even though all they had were old rations. She poured water into the pot, spilling half of it, then stirred so fast that most of the stew ended up on the floor. Elias groaned, shaking his head, but when he saw her laughing softly at her own mistakes, something inside him softened. Later, she copied his old soldier habits, standing straight. She raised her small hand to her forehead in a clumsy salute. "Reporting for duty, Dad," she said proudly. Elias blinked at her, caught between annoyance and something else. He wanted to tell her to stop calling him that, but the word felt less foreign each time. "You'll break your arm if you salute like that," he muttered, correcting her stance. She grinned, trying again. For a brief moment, Elias almost forgot the bounty hunters, the stepmother, the danger that hung over them. It felt like something he had lost long ago. A family, not of blood, but of choice. But peace never lasted long. At night, when Lyra finally slept, Elias sat, near the window sharpening his old combat knife. He had traded away most of his weapons after leaving the war, but one knife remained. He stared at its blade, the reflection of his tired eyes staring back. Suddenly, a faint hum filled the air outside. Elias stiffened. His instincts screamed. He moved silently to the window and peered into the street below. 2 alien figures walked through the shadows, cloaked in dark armor. Their hands held scanners glowing with faint blue light. Elias recognized the type. They were tracking energy signatures. His heart sank. He looked back at Lyra, curled up in the blanket, glowing faintly even in her sleep. Her bloodline carried a unique energy, one that no cloak or disguise could hide forever. The hunters paused outside the shop, one of them lifting the scanner higher. Elias gripped his knife tighter, ready to fight if they climbed the stairs. But after a long moment, the hunters moved on. Their boots echoing on the steel streets, Elias exhaled slowly, wiping the sweat from his brow. He knew it was only a matter of time before they came back, stronger, smarter. The next morning, Lyra noticed his silence. "You're worried," she said softly, sitting across from him. Elias tried to hide it. "I'm always worried, kid, comes with being alive." She tilted her head, studying him. "No, you're worried for me." He stared at her, unable to deny it. Finally, he muttered, "Your stepmother doesn't just want you gone. She wants you erased. If they find you, they won't stop at dragging you back. They'll kill anyone who stands in their way." Lyra's hands tightened into fists, her voice cracked. "Then why keep me? Why not give me to them and be free?" Elias leaned forward, his eyes hard. "Because I'm not like her, and because you asked me not to leave you, and I won't." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them quickly, whispering, "I'll behave, I promise I'll make you proud." Elias looked at her long and steady. He had no answer, but deep inside he knew the truth. He already was proud. Outside, across the city, whispers grew louder. Posters and holograms showed the face of the missing child with silver skin and violet eyes. The reward for her return rose higher each day, and in the throne hall of Aloria, her stepmother stood before a line of soldiers, her voice cold and sharp. "Find her, or I will burn this city to the ground." Elias did not know it yet, but the bond he was building with Lyra would soon drag him into a war far larger than himself. A war where one word, Dad, would become his greatest strength. Far above the crowded streets of the lower city, in the shining towers of Aloria's embassy, a woman stood before a mirror of black crystal. Her silver crown reflected the dim light. Her eyes were sharp, colder than steel. She was the stepmother, Lady Seraphine, ruler of the throne. Her voice was smooth but venomous as she spoke. To her advisors, "The child still lives. She should have been gone by now. How difficult can it be to catch one useless little girl?" The advisors shifted nervously. One bowed. "My lady, the bounty hunters report they have traced her energy to the lower levels, but the trail grows thin. Someone is hiding her." Seraphine's lips curled into a cruel smile. Then, someone will die for their mistake. Spread the order, triple the reward. Every merchant, every soldier, every rat in the alleys must know her face. I want her dragged before me. Alive if possible, but alive is not necessary." The crystal pulsed faintly, showing a blurred image of Lyra's glowing eyes. Seraphine's voice dripped with hatred. "She is the last shadow of her father, and I will erase even that shadow." Meanwhile, in the mechanic's shop, Elias tightened the straps on his old travel bag. His hands moved quickly, sharp from years of practice. He packed what little food he had, a few tools, and the knife he trusted more than any weapon. Lyra sat on the cot, her small hands folded nervously. "You're taking me away, aren't you?" Elias looked at her and nodded. "The hunters are closing in. We can't stay here. I know a place. Old war graveyard full of wrecked ships. No one goes there. We'll hide among the ruins." Lyra bit her lip. "But you're tired, I can see it. Why do you keep helping me? You could leave me and they would never bother you again." Elias tightened his jaw. "I already told you, kid, I don't abandon the ones who ask me to stay. Not again." His voice grew softer for a moment. Besides, you're braver than you think. You deserve better than to be thrown away. For the first time, Lyra let herself believe his words. She nodded slowly, her violet eyes glowing faintly with determination. The journey to the ship graveyard was long and dangerous. They traveled at night, slipping through dark alleys and hidden tunnels. Elias kept one hand near his knife, scanning every shadow. Lyra stayed close, clutching the strap of his jacket like a lifeline. At one checkpoint, soldiers stopped travelers. Scanning for energy signatures, Elias pulled Lyra close and whispered, "Stay quiet, follow my lead." When the scanner passed near them, Elias triggered a small device from his bag, an old soldier's trick. The device emitted a burst of static energy, masking Lyra's glow for a few precious seconds. The soldiers glanced at their screen, frowned but waved them through. Lyra whispered in awe, "How did you do that?" Elias smirked faintly. Let's just say war teaches you how to trick machines, but his smirk faded quickly. He knew the trick wouldn't work forever. At last, they reached the graveyard. A wasteland of broken warships stretched across the horizon. Old battleships lay torn open, their hulls like the bones of dead giants. The air smelled of rust and ash, but the silence here was heavy, safe. Elias guided her into the hollow of a ruined cruiser. Its corridors were dark and cold, but the thick walls blocked scanners. "We'll stay here," he said, lighting a small lantern. "No one comes to graveyards, too many ghosts." Lyra's small voice echoed, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Elias paused, staring into the darkness. "I've seen enough to know they never leave you." "Not really." They made a small corner their shelter. Elias laid down blankets while Lyra tried to clean the dust with her tiny hands. She looked at him suddenly, her eyes wide. "You're not going to leave me here, are you?" Elias met her gaze. "No, kid. Not unless you tell me to." She smiled weakly, her heart easing just enough to sleep that night. But outside the graveyard, shadows moved. The bounty hunters had followed faint traces of energy, though weaker now. They stood at the edge of the ruins, one whispering. "She's close," the scanners hum with her presence. Above them, a massive battleship descended slowly through the clouds. Its black hull gleamed under the starlight, the crest of House Aloria burning on its surface. Inside, Seraphine herself sat on her throne, her voice cold as ice. "I know you're hiding, little rat, but I will burn every ruin, every shadow, until you have nowhere left." Back. Inside the wrecked cruiser, Elias sharpened his knife in silence. The sound echoed against the steel walls. He watched Lyra sleep, her face peaceful for the first time. For a moment, he allowed himself to believe they were safe, but deep down, he knew the truth. Safety was only a dream. He closed his eyes, listening to the silence, yet his soldier's instinct screamed, something was coming, something big. And far above, the flagship's lights cut through the sky, beams searching the ruins like the eyes of predators. The Stepmothers. Reach had found them, and soon Elias would have to choose, keep running or stand and fight. The silence of the graveyard broke with the sound of engines. Elias's eyes snapped open. His soldier's instincts told him before his ears confirmed it. Ships were above, scanning beams sweeping the ruins. He rose quickly, shaking Lyra awake. "Kid, up now." Lyra blinked, confused and afraid. But when she saw the glow of lights cutting through the cracks of the ruined cruiser, her fear sharpened into understanding. She clutched his jacket tightly. "They found us." Elias grabbed his bag, slung it across his shoulder, and pulled her to her feet. "Stay close, don't let go. Whatever happens, don't stop running." The first explosion shook the cruiser. Dust rained from the ceiling as the beam tore through, steel like paper. The bounty hunters had started their sweep, clearing ship after ship. Elias cursed under his breath. "They're flushing us out." He led Lyra through the broken corridors, his boots pounding on rusted floors. Every turn led to another dead end, another collapsed hallway. But Elias moved with the memory of a soldier, reading ruins like maps, finding paths where others would see traps. Behind them, heavy footsteps echoed. Metal boots of hunters, their scanners glowing brighter with each step. Lyra gasped, her voice trembling. We can't outrun them forever. Elias's grip tightened. We don't outrun them, kid. We outsmart them. They reached the outer hull where twisted steel opened into the graveyard beyond. The night sky was red with searchlights, shadows of drones swarming above. Elias spotted an old fighter wreck half buried in the sand. He pulled Lyra inside, crouching low. The hunters' voices carried through the air, speaking in harsh alien tones. One voice hissed, "She is near. I can smell her bloodline." Lyra's small body shook. Elias placed a rough hand over her, trembling, fingers whispering, "Steady now, breathe slow, they can't find us if you stay quiet." But the scanners beeped louder. Pulsing blue light closer and closer, Elias gritted his teeth. He pulled out the old static device again, pressing it against the fighter's wall. Sparks flickered, jamming the scanners for a brief moment. The hunters cursed, their voices confused. "Interference, move to the next sector." Elias exhaled slowly, but he knew it was only a matter of time. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the air began to hum differently. Lyra slowed, her violet eyes glowing brighter. "Elias?" "I feel something," she whispered. He frowned. "What do you mean?" She touched the steel walls of the wreck and suddenly faint symbols lit up. Old alien markings buried in the ship's core. A pulse of energy radiated out, flowing through her like a river. Elias stepped back, shocked. "Kid, what are you doing?" Her small voice shook. "I don't know, it just answers me, like it knows me." The wreck groaned, lights flickering after years of silence. Elias realized with a chill. She wasn't just a runaway child. Her bloodline carried power tied to the old fleets, power that could awaken the dead. Machines, but the energy burst was too bright, too loud. The hunters turned instantly, scanners locking on. "There, she's inside the wreck," Elias cursed, grabbing her hand. "You just rang the dinner bell, kid, time to move." They ran again, but this time the hunters were closing in fast. Blaster fire cut through the air, striking metal walls, sparks raining down. Elias shoved Lyra ahead, blocking the shots with fallen panels. One hunter lunged from the shadows, claws reaching. Elias swung his knife in a sharp arc, steel meeting armor. The hunter snarled, stumbling back with a cut across its chest. Elias didn't wait. He pulled Lyra and kept running. They reached a canyon of broken ships, beams of light above growing sharper. A voice boomed from the sky, cold and merciless. "Child, your game is over. Come out or your protector dies screaming." Lyra froze, her eyes wide with terror. "It's her, my stepmother." Elias pulled her close, his voice steady. "Don't listen, kid, she only has power if you give it to her." The flagship above opened its hangar, releasing a squad of drones. Fire rained down, explosions tearing the ground. Apart, Elias dragged Lyra through the chaos, shielding her with his own body. At the edge of the graveyard, they found an old shuttle half buried in sand. Elias smashed the hatch open with his knife, shoving Lyra inside. He slid into the pilot's chair, his hands moving fast across the broken controls. The shuttle groaned, systems flickering. "Come, on, old beast, one last flight," Elias muttered, slamming the ignition. Engines sputtered, coughed, then roared to life. The ground shook as the shuttle lifted. Rising through the smoke and fire, hunters fired at them from below, drones swarming like hornets. Elias swerved through the ruins, weaving between broken warships. His face was calm, but his heart pounded like war drums. Lyra clung to the co-pilots, chair tears in her glowing eyes. "You're going to get us killed." Elias barked back. "Better to die fighting than to be chained." The chase tore across the sky, beams of fire chasing the shuttle. The hull groaned under pressure, warning lights flashing red. Elias pushed the controls harder, every move fueled by instinct and memory. "Hold on, kid," he growled. "We're not done yet." Suddenly, Lyra placed her small hands on the console. Her violet eyes burned brighter. The systems surged, lights stabilizing. The shuttle's engines roared stronger. Then before, Elias looked at her astonished. "You're powering it." Lyra's voice shook, but her words were firm. "I don't want to run anymore, I want to help you." The shuttle cut through the firestorm like a blade, bursting out of the graveyard into open skies. Behind them, the hunters cursed, drones, exploding one by one. For the first time they had escaped, but Elias knew it was only the beginning. Her stepmother would not stop. not until Lyra was in her grasp. And now, the galaxy itself had seen the power hidden in the small alien girl as the stars stretched before them. Elias whispered to himself, "What have I gotten us into?" Lyra looked at him with tired but determined eyes. "You're my dad. That means we face it together." The shuttle drifted through the dark sky, its engines still trembling from the chase. Elias gripped the controls with one hand and wiped the sweat from his brow with the other. His eyes scanned the stars, always searching, always expecting another hunter to appear. Behind him, Lyra leaned against the chair, exhausted. Her glowing eyes half closed. She had poured her strength into the shuttle, and now she looked like a candle flickering in the wind. Elias frowned. "Kid, you need rest." She shook her head weakly. "No, if I sleep, you'll fight alone. I don't want that." Elias's jaw tightened. He was used to fighting alone. It was all he had known since the war ended. But something about the way she said it made him feel heavier, as if he was carrying more than just himself now. The console flickered with a warning. Long-range contact detected. Elias's eyes narrowed. The signature was unmistakable. The flagship of Aloria was closing in. A voice filled the comm, smooth and venomous. "Elias, is it? A human soldier, hiding what does not belong to you? How amusing. Do you think you can protect her from me?" Lyra froze, her small hands gripping the chair. "It's her," she whispered. "My stepmother." Elias's voice was low, steady. "Stay behind me, kid." The flagship descended, casting a shadow over the stars. Its weapons lit the night like suns. Hundreds of soldiers prepared inside, ready to crush anyone who stood in the way. Elias landed the shuttle in the ruins of an old battlefield. Twisted metal and shattered cannons scattered like broken bones. He stepped out, knife in hand, his eyes locked on the approaching army. Lyra followed, her small form trembling. "You can't fight them all," she whispered, her voice breaking. Elias crouched before her, gripping her shoulders firmly. "Listen, to me you hide in those ruins. You don't move until I call. If I fall, you run. Do you hear me?" Tears filled her glowing eyes. No, I can't lose you. You're all I have, Dad." Elias felt his chest tighten. He had been called many things in his life. Soldier, killer, mercenary, but never Dad. That word burned in his heart like fire. He placed a hand on her cheek, his rough voice soft for once. "Then stay brave for me." The first wave of soldiers advanced, armored figures with glowing rifles. Their leader raised a hand. "Surrender the child human and you may live." Elias straightened, knife in one hand, a broken steel pipe in the other. His voice carried across the ruins, hard as iron. "If you want her, you'll have to go. Through me." The soldiers laughed, mocking him. One human against an army? Elias smirked faintly, scars pulling at his lips. "You've never fought a human who has something worth protecting." The battle began. Blaster fire cut through the night. Elias rolled behind fallen metal, striking fast. His knife flashed, piercing joints in their armor. His pipe-smashed helmets, he moved like a shadow of war, each strike calculated, ruthless. He was only one man, but he fought with the fury of 100. The soldiers began to fall, shocked at his resilience. His body took hits, burns searing his jacket, blood dripping from his arm. But he kept standing. In the ruins, Lyra crouched. Low, tears streaming down her face, she watched him fight, every strike fueled not by hatred but by love. "Dad," she whispered, clutching her chest. A strange warmth grew inside her, stronger than fear. The air began to hum. Her violet eyes blazed brighter than ever before. Energy rippled from her small hands, flowing into the ruins around her. The broken cannons lit up, ancient weapons sparking to life after years of silence. The battlefield itself seemed to wake under her call. Elias, panting and bleeding, turned when he heard the roar of energy. He saw the old cannons powering up, their barrels glowing. Lyra stood in the ruins, her body shining like a star. Her voice rang out steady and strong. "Leave him alone." Bolts of light shot from the cannons, tearing through the enemy ranks. Soldiers scattered, drones exploded in the sky. The battlefield was alive again, fighting for her. Elias stared in shock, then in pride. "Kid," he whispered. "You're more than you know." The flagship descended lower, Seraphine's voice cutting through the chaos. Enough! The child belongs to me. A massive beam of energy powered up on the ship's underbelly, aimed at the ruins. Elias's eyes widened. If it fired, they would both be ash. He staggered toward Lyra, pulling her close, his voice rough but steady. Listen to me. No matter what happens, you are not hers. You are mine, you're my daughter. Lyra's tears glowed silver as she whispered, and you're my dad. The beam fired, blinding light crashing down. Elias wrapped himself around her, shielding her with everything he had. But instead of burning, the light bent. Curving like water around them, Lyra's glow flared, her power pushing back against the flagship's weapon. Her stepmother's voice screamed in fury across the comm. But the beam failed, scattering into the night sky. The soldiers who remained hesitated, their courage breaking. Whispers spread through them. She defied the flagship. The child of Aeloria wields the old power. As silence fell, Elias stood with Lyra in his arms, his body bruised and bleeding but unbroken. He looked at the army, still watching, his voice carrying across the ruins. You wanted a throne. You wanted a prize. But she's not your heir, she's my daughter. And no one takes her from me. The soldiers wavered, their loyalty to Seraphine cracking under the weight of truth. For the first time, the galaxy saw not a soldier or a runaway, but a father and a child standing together against a Miao queen. And for Elias, it was no longer about survival. It was about something greater. Family. Smoke still drifted across the ruins, glowing embers lighting the battlefield like dying stars. Elias stood tall, though his body ached, blood seeping from cuts across his arms and chest. Beside him, Lyra's violet eyes glowed with soft light, no longer wild with fear but calm with a new strength. The enemy soldiers did not advance again. They had seen the flagship's beam fail, had watched a child bend death itself, and they began to whisper among themselves. Some lowered their weapons, uncertain. Above, the massive flagship hovered like a wounded predator. Seraphine's furious voice echoed across the comm. Cowards! She is nothing but a child. Obey me. Take her. But her soldiers hesitated, fear crawling into their hearts. They looked from the queen's crest on the ship to the small figure of Lyra, standing tall beside a scarred human. And for the first time, their loyalty wavered. Elias raised his voice rough and steady. Look at her. Your queen calls her worthless, but you saw what she is. She carries the strength of your ancestors. She doesn't want a throne. She doesn't want power. All she asked for was a home. And Seraphine cast her out like garbage. That's your queen. That's who you follow. The words carried across the battlefield. Hard and true. He was not a politician, not a noble, but a soldier who had lived through blood and loss. And the truth in his voice struck deeper than any weapon. Lyra stepped forward, her small hand clutching Elias's. Her voice shook, but did not falter. I don't want to rule, I don't want armies, I only want a father who will never leave me, and I have found him. The silence that followed was heavy. Then slowly, the first alien soldier dropped his rifle. Another followed, then another, until dozens laid down their weapons. Their eyes no longer on Seraphine's crest, but on the girl who had been called Banished. Above, Seraphine's scream was full of rage. Traitors! You dare defy me? The flagship's cannons powered again, but this time the soldiers below did not raise their rifles in support. Instead, they turned their backs to her, their loyalty broken. Their whispers grew louder. The throne lies. The throne is cruel. She is the true blood. Seraphine's grip on power cracked, and she knew it. Her voice cut off, and within moments, the flagship pulled back, its engines roaring as it retreated into the black sky. The ruins were quiet once more. Elias dropped. To one knee, his strength finally giving way, Lyra rushed to him, her small hands pressing against his chest. Dad, stay with me. He gave a weak chuckle, wiping blood from his lip. Still breathing, kid. Takes more than a queen's army to kill me. Tears streamed down her silver cheeks. I was so scared. But you stayed. You never left me. Elias pulled her close, ignoring the pain in his body. His voice was rough but full of warmth. Told you I wouldn't, didn't I? For the first time, Lyra smiled through her tears, not the shy smile of fear, but the real smile of a child who finally felt safe. Days later, the ruins were abandoned once again. Soldiers had scattered, whispers of rebellion spreading through the galaxy. The story of a little girl who defied a queen, and the human who stood by her side began to travel from planet to planet. Elias and Lyra found themselves in a quiet corner of the stars, a small settlement where no one asked questions. Elias worked fixing old machines, his hands steady as ever. Lyra followed him everywhere, learning, laughing, sometimes still calling him Dad in a whisper, as if afraid the word might be taken from her. But Elias never corrected her. At night, she sat by the window watching the stars. "Do you think she'll come back?" she asked. Elias leaned against the wall, his eyes scanning the sky like always. "Maybe, maybe not. But if she does, she'll find us ready." Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes soft. "Not just ready together." He gave a faint smile, rare but real. "Yeah, together." One evening, as the sun set across the horizon, Lyra crawled into the chair beside him, curling against his side. "I don't need a palace, I don't need a crown. All I ever wanted was this. Just someone to call Dad." Elias felt something in his chest ease, a weight he had carried for years. For so long, he had lived with ghosts, with regret. But now, looking at her, he realized he had been given something no war could ever give: family. He wrapped an arm around her, his voice steady but gentle. "And you've got it, kid. For as long as I'm breathing, you've got it." The stars above shimmered, silent witnesses to a bond stronger than any throne. And in the galaxy that often forgot the meaning of kindness, one man and one child had found a home not built by blood or power, but by choice.